From Thom Hartmann's Daily Take Substack. Border agents or thought police? When did words become a crime? A chilling tale of detention, interrogation, and exile for the, quote, crime, end quote, of writing a blog. June 17th, 2025. The following is a song inspired by this article.
There's a plane from across the ocean, a rider lands with dreams in hand, but the steel-eyed men are waiting with questions written in the sand. Why'd you write about the protest? Why'd you question the mighty throne? Now his voice is marked as danger, and they send him back alone. Are they border agents or thought police? When did words become the crime? Are we a land of the free or just a faded memory of a truth that's lost in time? Are they border agents or thought police? Is your conscience contraband? When the First Amendment's buried deep, who'll take a final stand? His soul laid bare for daring to second guess. Deleted posts can't save you now. They got files on what you say. Once the land of liberty, now a stage for fear's dark play. Are they border agents or thought police? When did words become the crime? Are we a land of the free or just a faded memory of a truth that's lost in time? Are they border agents or thought police? Is your conscience contraband? When the First Amendment's buried deep, who'll take a final stand? Said it, Reagan too, let foolish speech meet speech that's wise. But now the foolish rule the gate, and truth is smothered under lies. Every voice they silence now is one less light against the dark, and every book they choose to burn leaves a scar upon our heart. Are they border agents of thought police? When did freedom lose its name? Are we a land of the brave or just a silent shivering grave of a dream that died in shame? Are they border agents of thought police? Are we shackled? Are we free? When they come for every voice but yours, will you speak for you and me?
Quote, whoever would overthrow the liberty of a nation must begin by subduing the freeness of speech, end quote, Benjamin Franklin. The Trump administration just refused to allow an Australian writer entry to America because he'd penned articles on his personal blog critical of the administration's support for Netanyahu's government's Gaza policies. Whether you support or oppose those policies, this should shock every American. George Orwell noted in his novel in 1984, quote, the thought police are always watching. The only safe way was to think nothing, to know nothing, to believe nothing, end quote. Are we there yet? Throughout my lifetime, American politicians of both parties have been outspoken in defending the right of people to speak their minds, regardless of their positions. Echoing the quote of often misattributed to Voltaire, quote, "I disapprove of what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it," end quote. Elected officials from Lincoln to Goldwater to Reagan have pointed to our First Amendment rights of free speech as a bedrock of the American ethos. A strong nation that believes in its principles isn't afraid of criticism. If anything, the embrace of dissent is a steel in the spine of our nation. As the First Amendment to our Constitution says, quote, "Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech or of the press," end quote. Yet, now, we have officials who are examining the writings of people flying into the United States and using those writings, when critical of Trump or his friends, to harass travelers or even deny them entry into the country. Alastair Kitchen is a 33-year-old Australian writer who spent 6 years in New York at Columbia University getting his master's degree. His Substack blog, quote, "Kitchen Counter," end quote, explicitly called out the university of both Republican and Democratic politicians for approving of Trump arresting students based on their speech. That, apparently, was enough of a crime to keep him out of the United States when he tried to enter the country recently for a 2-week visit to friends in New York. Quote, "Because I was a creative writing student, I took the opportunity to witness the protests and wrote about them in depth on my personal blog," end quote, he told a reporter for The Guardian. Concerned that his writings may offend the Trump administration, he deleted his comments before boarding the plane from Melbourne to Los Angeles, but it wasn't enough. The hyper-vigilant of officers apparently worried that anybody who disagreed with Netanyahu or Trump represented a threat to America, caught him at the airport in L.A., interrogated him for 9 hours, and then deported him back to Oz. Quote, "The PCB explicitly said to me, 'The reason you've been detained is because of your writings on the Columbia student protests,' end quote, he told Guardian Australia. He added, quote, "Clearly, they had technology in their system which linked those posts to my visa a long time before I took them down. Because they all knew about the posts, and they interrogated me about the posts once I was there, they had already prepared a file on me and already knew everything about me," end quote. Kitchen told The Guardian that he's frankly, quote, "terrified of retribution and reprisal from the U.S. government," end quote, for speaking to the newspaper about his experience at the Los Angeles airport. It's probably safe to assume that he's not the only non-citizen who's undergone this Orwellian experience. He may be just the only brave one to have spoken to the press about it. This seems to fit a growing pattern. Hassan Piker, an American who was born here, was detained for several hours when flying home into the United States in this May. As the New York Times noted of the blogger and podcaster who has over 4 million followers on YouTube and Twitch, quote, "Hassan Piker, the popular Turkish-American online streamer, said he was stopped and questioned for hours about his political beliefs by the U.S. Customs and Border Protection after flying back into the United States from overseas on Sunday," end quote. He told the Times, quote, "They straight up tried to get something out of me that I think they could use to basically detain me permanently," end quote. Amer Makhled was an American-born attorney who represented one of the University of Michigan protesters protesting Israeli policy in Gaza. He was similarly detained when flying into Detroit with his wife and kids following an April vacation in the Dominican Republic. NPR reported that when Makhled tried to pass through customs, one of the agents called for assistance from the, quote, "tactical terrorism response team," end quote. Makhled told a reporter from the news network, quote, "My heart fell into my stomach at that point. I was so concerned and worried," end quote. He was released after 90 minutes of interrogation, but the question remains, when did American law enforcement officers become the thought police? Recently, Republican Kathy McMorris Rogers, the House Energy and Commerce Committee chair, was the lead author of a letter entitled, quote, "Free Speech is Foundational to America," end quote, expressing horror at the possibility that our government would be monitoring or try to regulate political speech. She noted correctly, quote, "The answer to speech that we disagreed with should always be more speech," end quote. She added, quote, "Our founding fathers and mothers enshrined the First Amendment to protect against government officials abusing their positions of power and public trust to try to silence those voices of those whom they disagree," end quote. In that, she was essentially echoing Republican President Abraham Lincoln, who famously said, quote, "The right to say wise things necessarily implies the right to say foolish things. The answer to foolish speech is wise speech, and not force. The Republic is founded upon the faith that if the American people are permitted freely to hear foolish and wise speech, the majority will choose the wise. If that faith is not justified, the Republic is based on sand," end quote. President Ronald Reagan, in his farewell address on January 11, 1989, noted how America's embrace of free speech is one of the main things that drew others to us from all across the planet. Quote, "Countries across the globe are turning to free markets and free speech and turning away from the ideologies of the past," end quote. Even Mitch McConnell weighed in on the issue. Quote, "Americans from all walks of life understand how extraordinarily special the First Amendment is. Like the founders, they know that the free exchange of ideas and the ability to criticize their government are necessary for our democracy to survive. It really doesn't matter who you are or whether what you're saying is popular. These rights do not exist to protect what's popular. They exist precisely to protect what isn't. Because the moment we allow ourselves to believe that some people stand outside the free speech protections of the First Amendment, we're all in trouble," end quote. Apparently, as Mitch McConnell noted, quote, "We're all in trouble," end quote. Or damn close to it. Franz Kafka's opening line from the trial could just as easily describe what's happening in Trump's America today. Quote, "Someone must have slandered Joseph K. for one morning without having done anything truly wrong. He was arrested," end quote. "Travelers are being stopped at our borders, not for criminal acts, but for the crime of speaking out. A blog post criticizing Trump, a tweet expressing solidarity with Pakistani students, a comment on Facebook about fascism. That's all it takes now to be interrogated, turned around, and blacklisted. This isn't national security, it's ideological cleansing. It's the thought police with badges and DHS lanyards." Kafka also wrote, quote, "It's only because of their stupidity that we're able to be so sure of themselves," end quote. But don't mistake Trump and Noam's stupidity for harmlessness. When agents of the state are combing through speech to decide who gets to enter the country, it's not just foreigners who should be alarmed. It's every one of us. This is how authoritarian creeps in, not with tanks, but with men in uniform who tell you that your words are a threat, that your conscience makes you into a suspect, that the border is now a checkpoint for loyalty to the king. If we still believe in liberty, we can't allow this to stand. Silence is not safety. It's surrender.